The church was full, yet it felt hollow. Sunlight streamed through the tall stained-glass windows of St. Margaret's Chapel, painting the pews in soft blues and golds. Guests whispered, adjusted their clothes, checked their watches. The organist's fingers hovered over the keys, waiting for the cue that never came. At the front, the groom stood alone. Ethan Cole, tech investor, socialite, heir to a polished family name, kept forcing a smile that was slowly cracking. His hands were clenched behind his back, knuckles white. The priest glanced at him again, quietly asking with his eyes, "Do we delay longer?" 30 minutes had already passed. At the back of the church, the doors remained closed, and in the bridal suite upstairs, Claire Whitmore sat on the edge of a velvet chair in her wedding dress, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. No calls, no messages, just silence. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The lace sleeves of her gown felt too tight, like they were trapping her in a moment she couldn't escape. She had rehearsed this day 1,000 times in her head, walking down the aisle, Ethan's smile, the vows, the applause. But not this, never this. Her maid of honor, Lily, stood near the window, arms crossed, anger simmering beneath her concern. "He's not coming," Lily finally said. "You know that, right?" Claire swallowed. "He has to, he wouldn't do this." But deep down, something inside her was already breaking, because Ethan had been distant for weeks. Late nights, short replies, conversations that felt like business meetings instead of love. She had ignored the signs, telling herself this was just pre-wedding stress. Now, sitting alone in white, she realized the truth too late. Downstairs, murmurs grew louder. Phones were pulled out. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered, "Did he leave her?" That was when Daniel Hayes arrived. Daniel wasn't supposed to be here this early. As the CEO of Whitmore Solutions, the company Claire worked for, he had planned to attend quietly, sit in the back, and leave before the reception. He hated weddings. Too many promises, too many expectations. But the moment he stepped into the church and saw the chaos, he knew something was wrong. Daniel was tall, composed, his presence calm in a way that made people straighten without realizing why. At 38, he carried authority effortlessly, the kind that didn't need to be announced. He caught Lily's eye first. Her expression told him everything. "She's upstairs," Lily said, her voice tight. "Alone." Daniel didn't hesitate. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, ignoring the whispers behind him. When he reached the bridal suite door, he paused, only for a second, then knocked gently. "Claire," he said softly, "it's Daniel." There was no answer. He opened the door slowly. Claire looked up, mascara smudged, eyes red, veil slipping from her hair. In that moment, she didn't look like a bride. She looked like someone who had just been abandoned in front of the world. "I'm sorry," she whispered, as if this disaster was somehow her fault. Daniel's chest tightened. He had always known Claire as sharp, dedicated, quietly strong. She was the woman who stayed late to finish projects, who never complained, who carried herself with dignity no matter the pressure. Seeing her like this did something to him he wasn't prepared for. "Ethan's not answering," she said, voice shaking. "Everyone's waiting. I don't know what to do." Daniel took a breath. His mind raced, not with strategy or numbers, but with something far more dangerous: emotion. Downstairs, the priest cleared his throat, preparing to announce the delay. Daniel looked at Claire, and in that split second, between her tears and the echoing silence of the church, an impossible idea crossed his mind, an idea that would change everything. He stepped closer and said quietly, firmly, "Claire, you're not walking out of that church broken." She stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Daniel held her gaze, his voice low but unwavering. "I won't let you be humiliated today." The organ downstairs began to play again, uncertain notes filling the air. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Claire felt something unexpected. Not hope, but the sense that this story was far from over. Like and subscribe for more stories like this. The church doors creaked open again, but this time no one turned with hope. They turned with curiosity. A middle-aged woman stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Her navy blue dress was elegant, expensive, and completely out of place for a guest arriving this late. It was Margaret Cole, Ethan's mother. Her face was pale, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes darting across the room as if she were walking into a courtroom instead of her son's wedding. Conversations died instantly. Phones lowered. Every instinct in the room knew this wasn't good news. At the altar, Ethan straightened, relief flashing across his face for half a second, until he saw his mother's expression. She walked straight past the pews, ignoring the whispers, and stopped beside him. "Where Claire?" she asked under her breath. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's upstairs." Margaret closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if bracing herself. Then she said the words that shattered the room. "She shouldn't come down." Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Margaret leaned closer, her voice shaking despite her attempt to stay composed. "Ethan didn't run late," she said quietly. "He left." Ethan's breath caught. "Left where?" Margaret swallowed. "He got on a flight this morning, private charter, destination Paris." The silence that followed was deafening. Upstairs, Claire stood near the window now, watching the parking lot through blurred vision. Daniel remained by the door, arms folded, grounding himself before saying something he couldn't take back. Before either of them spoke, Lily burst into the room. Her face said everything. "He's gone," Lily said. "Like gone." Claire turned slowly. "What do you mean?" Lily hesitated, then forced the words out. "Ethan left the country. His mom just told him." The room spun. Claire reached for the chair, her fingers trembling. "Left, why?" Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady but low. "Because he's a coward." Claire looked at him sharply. Daniel exhaled. "I'm sorry, that was harsh, but men don't disappear on their wedding day unless they're running from something." Lily crossed her arms. "Or someone." Claire's heart sank. "There's someone else." Lily nodded. "I didn't want to say it earlier, but I saw messages on his phone last week. He said it was a client." Daniel's eyes darkened. "It was." Claire laughed weakly, the kind of laugh that comes right before tears. "So this is it. I become the girl everyone whispers about. The bride who got left." She looked down at her dress. "I wore white for a man who couldn't even say goodbye." Downstairs, the priest announced a brief recess. Guests stood awkwardly, pretending not to stare. Social media was already alive. Someone had posted a photo captioned "Wedding Delay." Margaret Cole remained frozen in her seat, staring at the altar like it had betrayed her too. Back in the bridal suite, Daniel stepped forward. "Claire," he said carefully, "look at me." She didn't. "I know this isn't my place," he continued, "but what happens next matters." She finally met his eyes. "What happens next is I walk out alone." Daniel shook his head. "That's what everyone expects." So, he said, choosing his words. "You deserve better than being remembered for what someone did to you." Claire's voice cracked. "Then what am I supposed to do? Pretend this didn't happen?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "You take control of the moment." Lily frowned. "Daniel, what are you suggesting?" He paused. For the first time since anyone had known him, Daniel Hayes looked unsure. Then he said it. "Let me walk you down the aisle." Both women stared at him. "That's insane," Lily whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, it is." Claire blinked. "You're my boss. I know. You hate weddings." "I do. And you want to stand in front of all these people and make sure no one ever sees you as a victim again," he finished. Claire shook her head, tears falling freely now. "Daniel, this isn't a movie." "No," he said softly. "This is your life, and right now you get to decide how this chapter ends." A knock echoed at the door. Margaret Cole stood outside. She looked at Claire, guilt flooding her features. "I am so sorry," she said. "I raised him better than this." Claire straightened, wiping her face. "I believe you." Margaret glanced at Daniel, then back at Claire. "If you walk out, I'll understand." Daniel met Claire's eyes again, but this time there was something else there. Not pity, not obligation, respect, and something dangerously close to certainty. The organ began again downstairs, this time louder, firmer. Guests returned to their seats, confused but curious. Claire took a deep breath. She looked at her reflection one last time. Then she said the words no one expected. "Okay." Lily gasped. "Okay what?" Claire lifted her chin. "I'm done hiding." She turned to Daniel. "If I walk down that aisle, you walk with me. Not as my boss, not as a favor." Daniel swallowed. "As what?" Claire held his gaze. "As the man who didn't leave." Downstairs, the doors of the church slowly began to open, and for the first time that day, the audience leaned forward. because something far bigger than a ruined wedding was about to begin. The church doors opened wide. Not softly, not gracefully. They opened with a weight that silenced every breath in the room. The organ stopped mid-note. Two figures stood in the doorway. Not the groom and bride everyone expected, but Claire Whitmore still in white, her shoulders squared, chin lifted, and beside her Daniel Hayes. A ripple of shock moved through the chapel like electricity. Whispers erupted instantly. Who is that? Isn't that her boss? Wait, where's Ethan? Phones came back up, faster this time. Daniel felt every eye on him, every assumption forming in real time. He had faced hostile boardrooms, billion-dollar negotiations, and public scrutiny, but nothing compared to this. Because this wasn't business. This was personal. Claire's heart hammered as she took her first step forward. The aisle felt longer than it had in every rehearsal. Each step echoed with judgment, confusion, and disbelief. But she didn't stop. She didn't look left. She didn't look right. She focused straight ahead, toward the altar that had almost become her public execution. Daniel walked beside her, steady, deliberate. His arm wasn't linked with hers. There was no performance, no romance on display. Just presence. At the altar, the priest stared, stunned. Margaret Cole stood abruptly, one hand covering her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes, not of joy, but of shame. Ethan's father whispered furiously to someone beside him. The front row was chaos masked by expensive suits and polite smiles. Finally, the priest cleared his throat. "Miss Whitmore," he said gently, "do you wish to proceed?" The question hung in the air like a dare. Claire turned, not to the priest but to the crowd. Her voice was calm, too calm. "I know this isn't what anyone expected," she said. "It's not what I expected either." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. "But I won't walk away today as someone who was abandoned without a voice." She glanced briefly at Daniel, just a fraction of a second, then back to the room. "This man beside me didn't plan to be here like this," she continued. "He didn't promise me anything. He didn't owe me anything." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He simply refused to let me stand alone. Silence, then applause. Not loud, not unanimous, but real. The priest nodded slowly. "Then how would you like to proceed?" Before Claire could answer, a sharp buzz cut through the moment. Daniel's phone vibrated in his pocket. He frowned, pulling it out discreetly. "Unknown number, international." He answered. "Daniel Hayes," he said quietly. The voice on the other end was tense, familiar. "I assume she walked," Ethan said. Daniel's jaw hardened. "You have no right to call." Ethan laughed, a brittle sound. "Relax, I just wanted to see how dramatic it got." Daniel's eyes darkened. "You left her." "I spared her," Ethan replied. "Marriage was a mistake. She deserved someone who actually wanted that life." "And Paris?" Daniel asked. A pause. "She wouldn't understand," Ethan said finally. "Neither would you." Daniel lowered his voice. "You're wrong. She understands exactly who you are now." Ethan scoffed. "So what, you're playing hero now?" Daniel looked at Claire, standing alone at the altar waiting. "No," he said. "I'm standing beside someone who showed up." He ended the call. When he looked back at Claire, she knew. Something had shifted. She didn't ask what the call was about. She didn't need to. The priest spoke again. "Claire, would you like to continue with a different ceremony, or conclude today as a declaration of closure?" Claire took a breath. "I won't pretend this is a wedding," she said, "but I won't pretend it didn't matter either." She turned to Daniel. "Stay," she said quietly, "just stay." Daniel nodded. The priest adjusted his glasses. "Then let us acknowledge today not as a union, but as a moment of truth." Outside the church, headlines were already forming. Bride walks down aisle with CEO after groom vanishes. Wedding turns into public reckoning. Who is Daniel Hayes? Inside, something quieter was happening, something far more dangerous. Because for the first time, Claire wasn't thinking about Ethan, and Daniel wasn't thinking about consequences. They were both thinking the same thing. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning no one could undo. By morning, the story was everywhere. Not just local blogs or gossip pages, but national outlets. Screens in coffee shops looped the same image. Claire in her wedding dress, Daniel beside her, frozen mid-step in the church aisle. Runaway groom, unexpected escort, CEO crosses a line or saves the day. Power romance, and a wedding gone wrong. Claire watched it all from her couch, still wrapped in yesterday's shock. The The dress lay folded on a chair like a ghost she didn't know how to bury. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers, old friends, distant relatives, people who hadn't spoken to her in years suddenly concerned. She ignored them all, except one message. "Daniel, I'm outside. Only if you're okay with that." She stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "Come up." When Daniel stepped into her apartment, he didn't look like the man from the headlines. No suit, no armor, just a simple button-down, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired. They stood there awkwardly. Two people suddenly famous for a moment neither had planned. "I spoke to legal this morning," Daniel said first. "They're preparing statements. The board is uneasy." Claire gave a small smile. "About what?" "About perception," he replied. "About me, about us, about whether yesterday was appropriate." Claire exhaled sharply. "Of course it was." Daniel studied her. "Are you okay?" She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed softly. "I don't even know what that means anymore." He nodded once. "That's fair." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but loaded. Finally, Claire spoke. "I'm coming back to work tomorrow." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said firmly. "I refuse to let this define me." He hesitated. "Claire, it will be difficult." "I know," she said. Whispers, looks, HR pretending not to notice. "And boundaries," Daniel added quietly. Her eyes met his. "Yes, boundaries." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Daniel said the words that surprised even him. "I can step back if you want." Claire blinked. "From what?" "From overseeing your department," he said. "From any position that puts you under scrutiny." She considered it, then shook her head. "No, I earned my place. I won't disappear to make others comfortable." Something in Daniel's expression shifted, pride, sharp and unguarded. The next morning, Whitmore Solutions buzzed like a disturbed hive. Claire felt it the second she walked in. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Eyes followed her, some sympathetic, some curious, some judgmental. In the elevator, two coworkers fell silent as she entered. "Good morning," Claire said calmly. They nodded, embarrassed. On the top floor, behind glass walls and polished steel, the board meeting was already underway. Daniel stood at the head of the table, composed as ever. But the questions came fast. Was this personal? Did you compromise company ethics? Is there a relationship we should know about? Daniel didn't flinch. "There is no inappropriate relationship," he said evenly. "There was a human moment, and I stand by it." A board member leaned forward. "Public opinion doesn't care about intentions." Daniel met his gaze. "Leadership isn't about hiding when things get messy." Silence. Finally, the chairwoman spoke. "This will follow you." Daniel nodded. "I know." Later that afternoon, Claire found herself standing outside Daniel's office, hand hovering near the door. She knocked. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. For the first time since the wedding, they were alone at work. "I heard the board wasn't gentle," she said. He gave a half-smile. "They rarely are." She hesitated. "I don't want to be your liability." Daniel stood. "You're not." "But the world thinks." "I don't manage the world," he interrupted softly. "I manage what's right." Their eyes held. This time, neither looked away. There it was, the line neither of them was supposed to cross. Claire broke the silence. "We should talk about what this is." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, we should." But before either could say more, his assistant knocked urgently. "Daniel," she said, voice tight. "There's a caller from Paris." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Claire's stomach dropped. "Ethan." The assistant nodded. Daniel looked at Claire. "Do you want to hear this?" Claire straightened. "Yes," she said. "Put him on speaker." The call connected. Ethan's voice filled the room, calm, confident, infuriatingly distant. "I see the story didn't die," he said. Claire stepped forward. "No," she replied coldly. "It finally told the truth." A pause. Then Ethan said something that made Daniel's jaw tighten. "I want to come back." The room went very still. The silence after Ethan's words felt heavier than any shout. "I want to come back." Claire didn't respond immediately. She stood there, arms folded, breathing slow and controlled, like someone who had already survived the worst and refused to be pulled back into it. Daniel watched her closely, not protectively, respectfully. This was her moment. "Come back for what?" Claire finally asked. Ethan chuckled softly through the speaker, the sound polished and detached. Let's not pretend this got out of hand. I panicked. Things move fast before a wedding. Everyone knows that. Claire's eyes hardened. You didn't panic, you disappeared. A pause. I was under pressure, Ethan said. Family expectations, public image, you know how my life is. Daniel stepped closer to the desk, voice sharp. You boarded a private jet to Paris. That's not pressure, that's privilege. Ethan ignored him. Claire, listen to me. The media circus, it won't last. We can fix this. Quietly. Fix, Claire repeated. You think this is a PR issue? I think emotions are high, Ethan replied smoothly. We invested years in this relationship. One mistake shouldn't erase that. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. One mistake, she said. You didn't forget an anniversary. You didn't lie about being late at work. You left me standing in front of hundreds of people. She stepped closer to the speakerphone. You didn't even send a message. Silence. Then Ethan's tone changed, lower, more honest. I was afraid, he admitted, of settling, of choosing one life forever. Claire nodded slowly. And now I see what I almost lost. Daniel crossed his arms. You didn't lose her, you threw her away. Ethan exhaled. Daniel, with all due respect, this doesn't concern you. Claire cut in instantly. It does, because he stayed when you ran. Another pause. Ethan's voice tightened. Is that what this is? You replaced me already. Claire straightened. No, she said firmly. I replaced my silence. She took a breath, then delivered the words that changed everything. I'm not coming back to you, ever. Ethan laughed nervously. You don't mean that. I do, she said, because the man I was willing to marry doesn't exist, and the one speaking to me now, I don't recognize him. Daniel felt something settle in his chest. Final, clean. Ethan tried one last time. Claire, think about the life we planned, the house, the future. Claire's voice softened, but only slightly. I am thinking about my future. That's why I'm choosing myself. She reached forward and ended the call. The line went dead. For a moment, neither she nor Daniel spoke. Then Claire exhaled, deep shaking, and sat down. I thought that would hurt more, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. It already did its damage. She looked up at him. Thank you for not speaking for me. He met her gaze. You didn't need anyone to. Later that evening, Claire did something no one expected. She posted, not a scandal, not an accusation, a statement. I was left, but I was not broken. I will not explain my worth to someone who couldn't show up. It went viral within minutes. Support flooded in. Women, men, strangers, people sharing their own stories of abandonment, of choosing themselves too late or just in time. At Whitmore Solutions, the reaction was immediate. Some applauded her strength. Others whispered about complications. And the board, they called Daniel back in. This is escalating, the chairwoman said. You need to distance yourself. Daniel didn't hesitate. No, he said, I won't abandon someone twice. A board member frowned. This could cost you. Daniel nodded calmly. I'm aware. That night Claire stood on her balcony, city lights glowing below. Daniel joined her, keeping a respectful distance. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. I know, he replied. She turned to him. Why did you? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Because, he said carefully, there are moments in life where the cost of doing nothing is higher than any consequence. Their eyes met again. The line was still there, but it was thinner now. And for the first time, neither of them stepped back. Like and subscribe for more stories and support us. The backlash didn't arrive loudly. It arrived quietly. Emails that stopped including Claire. Meetings rescheduled without explanation. Smiles that didn't quite reach people's eyes. By the end of the week, the office felt colder. Not openly hostile, worse, calculated. Claire noticed it first in the break room. 2 colleagues fell silent when she entered. Someone checked their phone too quickly. Another pretended to stir coffee that had already gone cold. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was imagining it. But then HR sent the email. Mandatory ethics review, attendance required. Daniel read it on his tablet during a late meeting and closed his eyes. They weren't investigating Claire. They were investigating him. The next morning, Daniel arrived early, earlier than usual. He stood in his office, staring out at the city that had built him and could just as easily discard him. Claire knocked softly. You wanted to see me. Daniel turned. Yes, sit please. She did, but her instincts sharpened instantly. "They're questioning your role," she said before he could speak. Daniel gave a slow nod. "They're questioning my judgment." Claire's jaw tightened. "Because you walked me down an aisle. Because I chose a person over optics," he corrected. She leaned forward. "Then say that." "I will," he replied, "but there's more." That got her attention. Daniel hesitated, something he rarely did. "There's something you should know," he said, "before this goes any further." Claire waited. 10 years ago, Daniel began, "I was engaged." Her breath caught slightly. "She left?" Claire asked carefully. "No," he said, "I did." The words landed heavier than he expected. Daniel continued. "She wanted stability, family, a slower life, and I told myself I couldn't give that without losing everything I'd built." Claire didn't interrupt. "So I walked away," he said quietly. "No scandal, no headlines, just absence." Claire absorbed that. "What happened to her?" she asked. "She married someone else," Daniel replied. "She's happy. I made sure of that by staying gone." Claire studied him. "And you regret it?" "Yes," he said immediately. "Not because I loved her less, but because I mistook fear for ambition." Silence filled the room. "That's why," he added, "I couldn't let what happened to you end the same way. I recognized the moment." Claire exhaled slowly. "You're telling me this because if this turns ugly," Daniel said, "you should know who you're standing beside." Claire stood, not angry, not shaken, resolved. "Then let me be clear," she said. "I'm not standing behind you, I'm standing with you." The ethics review was brutal. Questions dissected intent, power dynamics, perception. One executive finally asked the question everyone else avoided. "Are you emotionally involved with Ms. Whitmore?" Daniel looked at Claire once, then back at the room. "No," he said, "not in a way that violates my role, and not in a way I would hide." After the meeting, the press got wind of it. Anonymous sources, carefully worded leaks. By evening, a headline trended: "CEO's moral stand," or "midlife crisis." Claire's phone buzzed relentlessly. Then came the call that changed everything. Her mother. "I saw the news," she said, voice tight. "Are you safe?" Claire closed her eyes. "Yes." "You could walk away," her mother urged. "Find something quieter, easier." Claire looked out the window, at the city, at the lights, at the life she had fought for. "No," she said gently. "I already did easy. It almost broke me." That night, Daniel received an email from the board. "We need your decision by morning. Step back publicly, issue a statement, distance yourself, or resign." Daniel didn't reply. Instead, he went to Claire's apartment. They stood on the balcony again. Same city, different weight. "They're giving me an out," he said. Claire didn't answer immediately. "Then, and what do you want?" Daniel looked at her, really looked. "I want to stop choosing safety over truth," he said. Claire nodded. "Then do that," she said, "even if it costs." He searched her face. "You understand what that means?" "Yes," she said. "It means you don't disappear." Daniel took a breath. For the first time in years, the decision felt terrifying. And right. Inside, Claire's phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Paris code. "Ethan, you're making a mistake trusting him." Claire stared at it, then deleted it without replying. She stepped back onto the balcony. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, "we don't rewrite ourselves to make others comfortable." Daniel nodded. In the morning, the city would wake up to another headline. But tonight, they stood exactly where they were meant to. Morning didn't wait for courage. It arrived anyway. Daniel stood alone in the boardroom, jacket folded neatly over the chair beside him. The glass walls reflected a man the world thought it knew, measured, controlled, untouchable. But inside, everything was loud. The board members filed in one by one. No small talk, no pleasantries, just tension disguised as professionalism. The chairwoman spoke first. "We need your answer, Daniel." He didn't sit. "I won't be stepping back," he said calmly. A ripple moved through the room. "You're choosing conflict," another executive warned. "No," Daniel replied. "I'm choosing consistency." The chairwoman folded her hands. "Then you leave us no choice." Daniel nodded once. "I understand." Silence stretched until the door opened. Claire stepped inside. Every head turned. "This meeting isn't open," someone started. "It is," Daniel said firmly. She was invited. Claire walked to his side, posture straight, voice steady. "You wanted distance," she said to the board. "Here it is. I'm not asking for protection. I'm asking for honesty." A senior board member scoffed. You've become a liability. Claire didn't flinch, only to people who mistake power for integrity. Daniel glanced at her, surprised, proud. The chairwoman sighed. This company cannot survive on emotions. Claire met her gaze. Neither can people. Daniel finally spoke again. I built this company by demanding accountability, he said. I won't abandon that now because it's inconvenient. He picked up his jacket. If my presence threatens your comfort, he continued, then I resign, effective immediately. Gasps, murmurs, panic. The chairwoman stood. You're making a grave mistake. Daniel smiled faintly. So did you, years ago, you just learned to live with it. He turned to Claire. Ready? She nodded. They walked out together. By noon, the news exploded. CEO resigns amid ethics storm, refuses to abandon colleague. Public reaction split in two. Some called him reckless, others called him rare. Support poured in faster than anyone expected. Former employees, industry leaders, even competitors. And Claire, she received an email from HR. Ethics review closed, no findings. Position reinstated if desired. She stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. That evening, Daniel and Claire met at a quiet diner. Nothing polished, nothing public, just chipped mugs and the hum of ordinary life. You could have stayed, Claire said softly. So could you, Daniel replied. She smiled. I didn't want to. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire asked the question that had been waiting between them. What are we doing now? Daniel didn't rush his answer. We stop pretending this is temporary, he said, but we don't label it to make others comfortable. Claire studied him. So truth without guarantees. Yes. She reached across the table. Took you long enough. Outside, the city moved on, hungry for the next scandal. Inside that small diner, something steadier began. Not fireworks, foundation, but across town. Ethan watched the news from a hotel room, jaw clenched, eyes dark. He opened his phone, typed, deleted, then smashed the glass on the table beside him. Because some men don't lose love, they lose control, and they don't forgive that. The first warning didn't come from the media. It came from Claire's access badge. She tapped it at the office entrance. Red light. She tried again. Nothing. The security guard avoided her eyes. HR said you'd be expecting this. Claire felt the familiar tightening in her chest, but she didn't panic. She smiled politely. Of course. Inside, the building she had helped grow no longer recognized her. An hour later, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You walked away from protection. You didn't even realize you had. Claire didn't need to ask who it was. She deleted the message. Across the city, Daniel sat in a temporary office, glassless, modest, rented by the week. Resignation hadn't slowed his mind. It had sharpened it. His phone rang. Claire, they locked me out, she said calmly. Administrative leave pending review. Daniel closed his eyes. I'm sorry. No, she replied. This is exactly what they'd do if they were afraid. There was a pause. Daniel, she added. Ethan reached out. That got his attention. What did he say? Nothing useful, Claire replied. Which means he's doing something dangerous. She was right. That afternoon, a story broke. Not from a newsroom, but from a source. Insiders claim emotional relationship preceded wedding incident. The implication was clear. The timing was deliberate. Claire's name trended again. But this time, the tone had shifted. Doubt, speculation, whispered judgment. Her mother called again. People are talking, she said softly. They're changing the story. Claire stared at the window. They always do. But are you sure? Her mother hesitated. That standing your ground is worth this. Claire didn't answer immediately. Then, if I move now, I teach them they were right. That night, Claire met Daniel. Not on a balcony, not in public. In a small community hall. Folding chairs, cheap lighting, a banner reading. Women in leadership, emergency forum. Someone had leaked the story too far. And now, the women wanted answers. Claire stood at the podium, heart steady, voice unfiltered. I was left at an altar, she began, and the world decided that meant I was weak. Murmurs. I was supported by a man who refused to disappear, she continued. And suddenly, that meant I was manipulative. Silence. She looked directly into the crowd. You don't lose credibility when someone abandons you. You lose it when you abandon yourself. Applause rose slow, then thunderous. In the back of the room, Daniel watched, not as a protector, as a witness. Across town, Ethan watched too. Not with regret, with calculation. He made a call. "Release the documents," he said. "All of them." The voice on the other end hesitated. "That could destroy her." Ethan smiled thinly. "It won't. It'll force her to choose." That night, an envelope slid under Claire's apartment door. Inside, private emails, selective screenshots, half-truths framed as scandals. At the bottom, a note: "Walk away publicly, or this becomes permanent." Claire sat on the floor, papers spread around her. Daniel arrived minutes later. She looked up at him. "They're giving me an exit," she said, "if I stay quiet." Daniel knelt beside her. "And if you do, they'll try to ruin me." He didn't touch the papers. He touched her hand. "Then we decide," he said, "what kind of ending this story gets." Claire met his eyes. Not afraid, not shaken. Clear. "I'm done letting men who ran decide how loud I'm allowed to stand." Outside, sirens echoed in the distance. The city felt restless. Because tomorrow, Claire wouldn't defend herself. She would go on record. And Ethan, he had no idea what he'd just unleashed. The cameras were already live when Claire walked in. No dramatic entrance. No entourage. Just a navy blazer, hair pulled back, spine straight. The anchor's voice cut through the studio. "Claire Whitmore has agreed to speak publicly for the first time since allegations surfaced suggesting." Claire raised a hand. "Let's start with facts," she said calmly. The control room froze for half a second. Then silence. "I was left at my wedding," Claire continued. "Not metaphorically, literally, no message, no explanation." Screens behind her showed timelines, verified travel records, Ethan's private jet, Paris. "I didn't accuse," she said. "I didn't chase, I stood still." She looked directly into the main camera, and that terrified people. Across the city, Daniel watched from his office, hands folded, jaw tight. This wasn't strategy, this was exposure. Claire took a breath. "The documents being circulated," she said. "Selective, incomplete, designed to suggest intimacy where there was none." She gestured slightly. "So I brought everything." The producer swallowed. Emails appeared time-stamped, context intact, legal clearance banners flashing, messages showing boundaries, declined invitations, professional language. Then one final slide, a message from Ethan, sent 3 weeks before the wedding. "If you hesitate, don't embarrass me. We can fix optics later." The studio shifted. Claire's voice didn't. "This isn't about heartbreak," she said. "It's about control, and what happens when it fails." Phones across the country buzzed. Across town, Ethan stood up too fast, chair crashing behind him. "That wasn't agreed." He snapped into his phone. "You said she'd fold," the voice replied. "She won't," Ethan said, panic edging in. "She's burning it down." "No," the voice corrected. "She's surviving it." Back in the studio, the anchor asked carefully, "And Daniel Hayes?" Claire paused, not because she was unsure, because the world was listening. "He didn't save me," she said. "He stood beside me when I didn't need saving." Daniel exhaled. "And now?" the anchor asked. Claire met the camera again. "Now I stopped being quiet to make powerful people comfortable." The broadcast ended. Within minutes, another headline overtook the first. Claire Whitmore releases full record. Narrative collapses. Legal analysts weighed in. Support surged. The documents Ethan released were now being investigated for coercion. Ethan's phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. "You need to stop," she said, "immediately." Ethan laughed once sharp, hollow. "I already lost," he said. "Didn't I?" "Yes," she replied. "The moment you tried to control the ending." That evening, Claire and Daniel stood outside the studio. No cameras now, just streetlight and quiet. "You didn't look at me once in there," Daniel said softly. "I couldn't," Claire replied. "If I did, they'd say this was about you." She turned to him. "But this part is." Daniel studied her face. "We crossed a line today." Claire nodded. "Yes. And there's no pretending it's theoretical anymore." "No," she agreed, "there is." A long pause. Then Daniel spoke, voice low but certain. "I don't want safety," he said. "I want whatever this is, honest, complicated, visible." Claire smiled, not wide, not cautious. "Real." "Good," she said, "because I'm done hiding in plain sight." Behind them, the city buzzed with reaction. Ahead of them, there were no guarantees, only choice. And this time, neither of them stepped away. The courtroom wasn't loud. It was sharp. Every sound carried. Heels on marble, papers shifting, the quiet breath before consequences. Ethan sat at the defense table, jaw tight, confidence stripped down to calculation. Across the aisle, Claire stood with her attorney, hands steady, eyes clear. This wasn't revenge. This was record. The judge adjusted his glasses. We are here regarding allegations of coercion, reputational manipulation, and unlawful dissemination of private communications. Ethan's lawyer rose. My client maintains. The judge raised a hand. We've seen the evidence. Screens lit up. Messages. Threats. The envelope. The demand to stay silent or be destroyed. The same tactics Ethan had used to leave without consequence. This time they didn't work. The ruling was swift. Restraining order granted. Civil case moving forward. Formal investigation opened into Ethan's business dealings abroad. Ethan looked back once. Claire didn't flinch. She didn't need closure. She had clarity. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, but Claire didn't stop. She walked straight past them. Her statement was already on record. That afternoon, she sat alone in a quiet office overlooking the city. Her office now. The offer had come an hour earlier. Interim director, strategic development. A role no one expected her to be given. One she had earned before the chaos, now impossible to deny. She signed, not because she had something to prove, but because she was done shrinking. That evening, Daniel waited on the rooftop of a low-rise building. City lights stretched out like a held breath. Claire joined him, wind catching her hair. It's done, she said. He nodded, I know. A pause. Then Daniel spoke. I've been offered something too. She raised an eyebrow. Already. A startup, clean slate, no glass walls. He met her eyes. But I won't take it if it means losing what we're building. Claire stepped closer. This isn't about choosing careers over people anymore, she said. It's about choosing with intention. Daniel smiled, quiet, relieved. So, he asked, what do we call this? Claire thought for a moment. Not a scandal, she said. Not a rescue. Not a secret. She took his hand. A choice. He squeezed her fingers. Below them, the city moved on. New stories, new noise. But this one ended exactly where it should have. With truth. With courage. With two people who refused to disappear when it mattered most. And if this story made you feel something, if you believe standing still can be an act of strength, then don't let it end here. Like this story, subscribe for more emotional, cinematic storytelling, and hit the bell icon, because the next story might just change how you see courage. Some stories are written to entertain, others are written to remind you who you are when everything is watching. This was one of those.